right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Insight Sessions. I'm your host, Jason Griffing, Director of Product at OneVision, and today joined by the founder and CEO of OneVision, Joey Kolchinsky. Looking forward to a discussion here about how to maintain an exceptional client experience as you grow your company. As a former integrator, this one's near and dear to my heart. I know all too well the difficulties inherent in trying to grow an integration business. There are, of course, many of those, but providing that consistent level of client support and that consistent client experience as you grow is, I would argue, one of the most difficult, challenging things to do as you grow your integration company. It just becomes exponentially more difficult to achieve those growth goals and maintain that consistent level of service and support, and to do so without completely destroying your work-life balance or that of your team. So whether you're an owner operator or simply looking to reduce dependence on yourself in the day-to-day business, no matter what your goals are, whether you're looking to drive significant scale or just get that work-life balance back, I think today's discussion promises to be a really helpful one. So Joey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, this is great. I'm looking forward to this one. Near and dear to
Yeah,
my heart as well.
absolutely. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump in. I want to just start by allowing you to tee up some of your background story. You've obviously got a couple of different lenses on this problem, both in your history as an integrator, and I mean, to an extent, you're still operating. We still have the legacy part of our business that's operating as an integrator in the Boston area. So you've got that lens on the problem. You've also, of course, got the lens as the founder and CEO of OneVision, who helps integrators all over North America deal with this problem. So, share a little bit about your background story, the origin story, and how this all came to be as a way to get us started here.
Yeah, I I think my origin story has evolved quite a bit over the years, and it's always a little bit different depending on the sort of purpose. And this one's a bit different, speaking specifically to work-life balance and how do we address both the opportunities and problems that service presents. As I thought about how I might share my origin story, it made me think back to a really specific moment. And that moment was in a movie theater with my brother, and I'll get to that in a second. But ultimately, I graduated from college, thought that my career would be in Wall Street. I had a hobby on the side, or a side business, supporting technology for some high net worth clients in the Boston area that I had been introduced to, but never thought it would be my full-time gig. Um, I prior to that had worked at Starbucks. That gave me a little bit of, that gave me the service bug. I really appreciated the experience that Starbucks baristas were trained and encouraged to craft, and enjoyed that for a few years. Um, Ultimately, Wall Street was not where I wanted to be long term. And I turned to what had been a hobby till then, and started focusing on that tech support business for high net worth clients full time. And that meant supporting their computers and mobile devices and things of that nature, so more IT support. Eventually, that turned into AV support as clients asked me to look at this rack of technology in their basement that inevitably existed. And I eventually parlayed that exposure and experience into learning how to also be an integrator and do large AV projects. What it culminated in for me, in terms of a really a defining moment of the career of my career, what made me really launch into solving this kind of problem, was when I went to the movies with my brother one night. I was still operating solo, and I got a call from a client that made me have to leave the movies. And I came back, huffing and puffing. I was pissed off. Maybe just 10 minutes later, and my brother asked me, he was like, you know, how much would you have to get paid to have gone through this experience right here with a smile, so that it would have been worth your time to leave the movie and not have you feel like your life was just screwed up, by this client intruding on it. And this came from such a great place from my brother, right? Because my brother was really looking out for my best interest. He was like, I want my brother to be happy. It pained him to see me so distraught. After hours, I was trying to enjoy a movie with him. And he was like, I bet if you just got paid more, you might be happy. And it was this massive unlock for me because he helped me appreciate that, you know, no one said I had to do all of this at whatever the rate was that I was charging, which back then, may have been in like the low hundreds or something. And it made me realize that like I could set the rate. Like my clients have the prerogative to ask and demand of my services, but I have the prerogative to say yes on my own terms. I'm not forced. I can choose to do what I want to do. And I think within a year from then, I had uh, uh, turned around and started charging $300-400 an hour. I started to have thousands of dollars per client in recurring fees. We had become a completely different business because I started to appreciate that I was going to do this on my own terms, and I was going to agree to take care of my clients only if I could be happy doing it. And for me at that time, it was about making more money. And then I'd be happy to do whatever they wanted me to do. Um, and that was an inspiration for sure. And that's where a lot of my energy is today, is helping partners think through how can we turn this ask that your clients keep having of you and your business into something that you're happy doing instead of something that you want to do less of.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a
Yeah.
recurring theme for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a powerful story. And I think it definitely serves as a good reminder for anybody out there listening that, you like you said, you can do this on your own terms. I'd love to kind of continue on that thread because, ultimately charging appropriately for it is one thing, and we should all, of course, be doing that. But ultimately, no matter how much you charge, you still run into challenges with work-life balance and the ability to deliver the support at scale. And ultimately, a lot of this comes down to, being able to grow your company and really get beyond this kind of, I think, hero complex that a lot of us have as humans and high performing knowledge workers. Like we want to solve problems, we want to do it ourselves, and talk about your journey, because I'm sure you went through that, right? Where you have this
Totally.
kind of assumption that in order to take great care of clients, you've got to be the one to do it.
Totally.
And how did you get past that?
Yeah. Um, I have so first, for sure, I think that that level of thinking was only possible because I was still in that hero complex stage of my business. Um, I was the solo operator. I could choose independently and universally, and uh, uh, and without anyone challenging me, that I was going to commit myself to my clients all day, all night long, and I would be able to charge appropriately for that. Um, the problem is some of that, comes from, as you know, Jason, you've been working with me for 9 years. I'm a recovering micromanager. And the first step in recovery is just, I think, admitting it in that regard. And I've totally admitted it and acknowledged it. Um, but uh, there's this moment when I hired a fantastic, one of my first employees was a fantastic, just someone who we would consider, call it a service manager, even a technician, though he was more focused on the computer side of things, but he was just fantastic with clients and could just navigate any situation. And he just always made sure clients knew that they were talking to the right person, and and created a great experience, even if he didn't know all the technology. I had hired him from the Apple Store. And uh, the first 3 months of his employment with me, I had him working behind a computer screen doing just the remote support. And I was convinced that I still needed to be the one out in the field meeting with clients in person. So anything that required an in-person appointment, I was doing. And he would just do things remotely. And of course, now that you've heard my description of this person, and in case he's listening, his name is Zach. And he'll know who he is. Um, he he should have been in the field from the start. He was amazing, and I could see that right off the bat. That's why I hired him. But I couldn't let go, and I couldn't have him go in the field because I was too much of a micromanager. I had to control every client situation. So what broke it? Well, I'm ashamed to say that it was not of my own volition. I had a lead foot back in the day, and I got my license suspended. And because I got my license suspended, I couldn't drive to client appointments anymore. So guess who had to drive me? Zach.
I haven't heard that. I
So,
hadn't heard this story before.
so Zach drove me, and for 3 months, he had a really natural, organic reason to be shadowing me in all my client appointments, meeting all the clients, learning all the systems, seeing how I did things, which by the way is not a terribly efficient way to like train somebody, but it worked. And by the end of that, when I got my license back, of course, Zach should continue to be out in the field taking care of clients. But if that had not happened, I'm pretty sure Zach would have like quit within 3 more months because I would not have been willing to like give him the I would not have been willing to let go of this hero constantly.
And you might still be a micromanager
And I'd
today,
still be a
right?
micromanager. That's right. Totally. Right. So I have a lot of gratitude for Zach's grace in those days.
Yeah, and for the
Uh,
cop who pulled you over. Yeah.
and for well, multiple. You know how many times you have to get pulled over in a 3-year period? I think it's 7 tickets. And trust me, I like read up
Wow,
on all
that's
these
impressive.
rules. I fought everything, but yeah, you got to get pulled over a lot to get suspended.
Well, that's a great story. I've been working with you a long time. I'd never heard that one before, so I learned something new today as well. So talk about though, like let's go deeper on this because there's a kind of reframing that I think has to happen where you go from saying, okay, I am the person that can provide my client with the best experience to realizing that, first of all, there are multiple ways to define what the best experience is. And it's certainly not, waiting for hours or days sometimes to hear back from that
Totally.
one person, fast response, getting them the help they need in the moment they need it, which is not scalable if you're one person doing it, right? So, like, there's this kind of reframing that has to happen where you say, okay, me dictating that I'm the best person to do this is actually becoming a bottleneck, right?
Yeah. Um, so my very first client was actually when I was in high school. And so at this point, I've known these, and they were tied to me through other, business and family ventures. So there were multiple connections. They are now investors in our company. So I've now known them for 25 years, more than half my life. Um, and I hold this client in very high regard. And if this client still called me today, I would drop everything to take care of them. Um, and at around 2012, 13, 14, when I now had a few employees and the team was growing and I had a couple more Zachs and we were capable of taking care of our clients, I still hung on to these, and this couple. And I remember specifically, like I just felt like they eventually came to my wedding. I'd been to their wedding, right? Like there was a deeper connection with them that I placed a lot of value on. And it's important to recognize I did, right? And I placed so much value on it that I felt like I had to be the one to pick up every call for them. And so I had pretty much at that point shifted everyone else and I'd gotten them to call the service team. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about how that happened because that was a transition process to make that happen. But this one I hung on to. And one day she called me and she needed some help with a computer thing. Of course, at this stage of the business, I'm busy doing a bunch of other things. I was not able to get back to her right away. And she appropriately lit me up. And she told me, I think it was over voicemail, I think. And she'd effectively said something like, Joey, I know you have a team. I know you have other people. Like, don't worry about it. I still love you. I'll still we'll still hang out. We'll still have barbecues, blah, blah, blah. Like, just tell me who I can reach, who can help me. It doesn't have to be you. And even though I was trying to do my best to be there for her, she was angry that I wasn't, or frustrated, maybe is the better word, that I had not done better to simply put somebody who I believe to be qualified on the phone with her. Because she told me that. She was like, You hired them. They're working for your company. They're obviously good enough to take care of me. They can help. And if they can't, then great. I still know that I still have you. But I'd rather just have someone quickly. And that was a huge wake up call for me because I was like, wow, if she is willing to say that to me, given how important I believe this relationship to be, well, then clearly I'm doing this wrong.
Right.
Right. And it really made me appreciate that the hallmark of really great service was actually, while yes, clients should know that I'm always available and the buck stops with me, and this stands true today. If any partner has a problem, of course, I'm an open door, come to me and talk to me directly. You should not have to do that for anything in the business.
Right.
And that's what I started to I endeavored to build a business where that was no longer necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was like the fact that a team not day to day managed by me, the owner, who's got the most vested interest in everything, could operate to a level of quality that would make clients happy. That's the hallmark of success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, Brad Camp, our director of business development at OneVision, has a saying that he says a lot that I like, I really like, which is, you say to your client, look, I'm always available to you, but I'm not always available. Meaning, if you ever really need to talk to me, like I'm not
Right.
going anywhere. But if you're having a problem with like your living room TV, like I'm not the best person to solve that. I'm not sitting by my computer 24/7. I
Right.
have a team for that, et cetera. So, I think that's a really, really important thing to internalize. And I love that story because, you've got this one relationship that you hold that's so sacred. And even that person is telling you, hey, just like, I
Right.
just need help. It doesn't have to be you. So I think that it's definitely a powerful.
Well, and you said something that I think is really important. I would almost invert the priority here of like or the emphasis of the conclusion. It's that it doesn't have to be you, right? It's not that you're telling the client I'll still be here for you. It's that you're not the best person. Not that it doesn't have to be you, but you are no longer the best person. That was also a big thing to acknowledge at some point. I am not the person who's studying the technology all day anymore. I am
Hmm.
not the person who's just fixed this 20 other times in the last month for other clients, right? Yes, I might be the person who might respond the fastest because I'm crazy and I'm up till 3 in the morning and I'll do that. But that doesn't mean that I'm the best person to solve this problem. So, uh, how, getting clients to appreciate that and me acknowledging that I was no longer the best person was a really critical step to the whole thing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well let's shift gears. We're going to get a little bit more tactical here in the back kind of two-thirds of this discussion, and we'll talk about some best practices and some of the specific challenges that one needs to address as you kind of go through this transition. But before we do that, I do want to spend a little bit of time just on one slightly more kind of abstract concept, which is let's acknowledge that there are multiple stages and that different strategies apply depending on where you're at, right? So we've identified some kind of personas, right? There's a craftsman, there's a lifestyle professionalized business, there's a scalable enterprise. Talk a little bit about, just set this up for us. Talk about the different stages that you may be at. Help listeners sort of identify like, okay, that's where I am, so that as we get into some of the more practical strategies, they can sort of map these concepts onto the stage of the growth trajectory that they're on.
Yeah, and um, as we go into this, I'll also preface this by saying there's no right stage. There's just the appropriate stage for you and your lifestyle and your choices and your needs.
Right. And
So
and they also may not be mutually exclusive, right? Like you may have
that's true.
elements of your business that are
That's true.
operating sort
Yeah,
of like in this
yeah,
stage and others that are, so this
yeah,
is just a general framework.
totally.
Yeah.
So I think the first stage is the craftsman, and it's where we all most of us in this industry have started in terms of if we started the business, then at some point we were the what is it, the chief cook and bottle washer or chef cook and
Hmm.
bottle washer, that phrase, right? You did everything. Everything was dependent on you. You had to find a way to make it all work. And for the most part, if you were successful at that, you had a knack for sort of being everywhere all at once. And gave clients a phenomenal experience. And I found over the years that the majority of businesses are seeking to graduate from that stage and get into what we would call the sort of professionalized business. You know, it'd still be a lifestyle business, right? It may not be something that's trying to scale and grow profits massively, but it's a professionalized business, one with, more than just you. But I'll pause on the Craftsman bit for a moment because I remember as I started OneVision as we know it today, where we now help partners to run their service departments, as I started to meet with integrators, I assumed that we were a great fit for every integrator. And I remember coming across a couple integrators who were a little bit like I was in my earlier 20s, or a lot like I was in my earlier 20s. They presented that way and they were deeply committed and they were frankly insane for how much they wanted to take care of clients. They were just instantly available all the time. And it made me appreciate that. I was like, if you actually graduate to this professionalized business too quickly, your service experience is actually going to take a step down. It's not a bad thing, by the way, right? Like we're just talking about like 99.999% amazingness to 99.9% amazingness. And because they're no longer getting you necessarily every time, and you're the one who knows them, and you've got the amazing touch and all that stuff. And my advice to them is if you actually are still committed to doing that and you have the energy for that, maybe instead of finding a way to do this more scalably, from a resource perspective, maybe instead you lean into the fact that you're providing a really unique service and you should go and triple your rates. You have a really unique client base. Like I've met some of these teams in Texas, in California. Usually they're major metropolitan markets. Somehow you've got access to like a really high net worth seam in that market. The right answer might be for you to just go double down on that and focus on the 50 clients you have, go charge several $100s an hour and go make a lot more money because you are truly providing something unique.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you no longer have the space for that, the energy for that, and you are trying to now build something that's able to scale beyond you, okay, now we have to talk about a more professionalized business that has teams of people. And usually even those teams are still dependent on a unicorn of sorts. Like, when I had Zach back in the day, like I can think over the years when I was an integrator and a service provider, there were, it was a very small percentage of my team over the years that I had hired unicorns. And I was super dependent on unicorns. And yes, I had a larger team, maybe we at some point were 10, 15 people, but there were like two or three that I was key person dependent on. And it was great. It was a larger business. It was more professionalized. I had more established processes. Clients got a more consistent experience. They called in to the same service number all the time. We had teams who were, on call and shifting responsibilities. Somebody could call out sick and not everything fell apart. But I was still really dependent on a couple people. And the business was still pretty dependent on me as well. And so the next stage was really thinking about how do you get this to be a larger scale enterprise where truly I'm an, CEO of the business and I'm no longer in the day to day. And by the way, we are not dependent effectively on any unicorn, and
Mm-hmm.
anybody in the company could be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I say that not from a threatening perspective. I say that from a business sustainability perspective, that we have
Right.
broken down the processes in enough ways that we could, we no role was this like weird unicorn role. It was like I know where to go find people who can do that well. Of course, I don't want to have to deal with the transition. I'd rather have the amazing person I have, but if I have to replace them, I can.
Yeah.
And I actually personally, as an integrator, never achieved that. I didn't get there. I started OneVision as it is today. And I'd say that's, and a lot of our focus is on working with the craftsmen who are trying to graduate into more professionalized businesses or currently professionalized businesses trying to elevate their game. And increasingly so now with the scope of our services, I think we're also working with the scalable enterprises as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's this idea related to this of like dressing for the job you want, right? So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, well, let's be honest, I'm at a kind of a craftsman stage. Like I still everything is very dependent on me. I recognize that. And maybe it feels difficult to like make that jump up to the next level because maybe you just don't feel like you're ready yet. But talk about this idea of like fake it, almost fake it till you make it, right? Like there are certain steps you have to take to present to your clients in a certain way. And that creates almost a feedback loop where your clients
Right.
start treating you a certain way. And then there's this kind of
Yeah.
self-reinforcing loop that happens.
I'll actually answer that from both angles. One, I'll say, if the job you want is to be the craftsman and you
Stick
really
with it,
enjoy that
right?
bespoke experience, lead into that, double down, and
Yeah.
don't be afraid to tell the client that that's who you are.
Hmm.
Because the client a client can tell that they're talking to a bespoke craftsperson business owner who's saying, I am very selective about the clients I take on. I know that I'm super expensive and I'm okay with that. And I'm only going to add one or two clients a year. Would you like to be my one client this year? Right? Lean into the exclusivity. But if you're trying to become a more professionalized business, then this is what Jason, you were just referencing, right? Now you've got to sort of be dressing for the part that you want. And there's a little bit of fake it till you make it because you've got to present to clients that you are a more scaled up business, that you can deliver consistency without clients having to call you all the time, right? Now you might have, I remember when we went from me emailing clients personally to us having a support email address. Oh my God. Like that's going to be so depersonalized. What do you mean a support email address? Right. And on the other hand, like I think when clients saw that, they were almost relieved because they were
Hmm.
like, I now see that this is legit,
Hmm.
right? If it's going to a support email address, there's probably a team behind it. There's software and systems to organize it all, right? I'm no longer just emailing Joey directly and having to CC Zach and other people to make sure everybody saw it, right? But for me, it was hard to let go of that. But I had to appreciate that as we leveled up things on our end, clients would actually start to pick up on those cues too. And it might be through things like uniforms. You wear the same shirt, everybody dresses consistently. That communicates to the client that the company's making investments. Maybe vehicles that have similar, are wrapped similar. Maybe a website that stays updated. Whatever it might be. There are infinite possibilities here, but dressing for that part so that the client perceives what you're thinking in your head and what you're trying to achieve, I think is a really important element.
Yeah, I think that to me is like the big takeaway there is that the way you present to your clients is going to reflect back in the way that they sort of engage with you. And so simple things like creating a dedicated support email or instructing clients to call a dedicated support line might sound small, but ultimately what they convey about your business is really important. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about like some of the operational foundations of getting a more robust, I'll say, service strategy in place. One of the things that we are doing right now internally, just to lift the veil a little bit, is we're talking about a lot about how when clients call into the OneVision team, we want to just absolutely nail the first minute of the call. We want to nail the whole call, but like there's this idea that if you can really make the client instantaneously feel welcomed and in the right place, that you build that goodwill bank very quickly. And so first impressions, right? It's just that basic
Yeah.
idea of like make a good first impression.
Yeah.
The broader point here though is this idea of, you know, having a simple concept that we're socializing internally, own the first minute. And what that allows you to do is kind of pack a lot of meaning and sort of vision into that one phrase that you can then just beat the drum over and over again with the team. And it really just helps with that change management, which is often one of the most difficult parts of achieving anything like this as a business. So talk a little
Totally.
bit about this idea of like coming up with a concept, naming it, and using that as a vehicle to drive change into how your team is
Yeah.
delivering service to clients.
So I think first, I think it's really important that if you, as a leader of the business, have something that's important to you when you're training, when you're executing, whatever, you need to invest the time into really distilling that feeling down to a named concept that you can define. Because if you don't, it will get diluted and lost along the way. For all the reasons you mentioned, Jason, it's really hard. How do you align everybody on something that doesn't have a name? And if it doesn't yet have a name, but you feel it, well, that's problematic, because how do you communicate it to everybody? And I remember in my early days, I used to think that the best way to train was through osmosis. That is the worst way to train, right? Because what it was is it was me being extremely, I mean, inadvertently, I didn't know I was being lazy, but I didn't know how to take the things that I held true, which is how you deliver on service. I didn't know how to distill that down to trainable concepts. I had not broken down. I just knew how to do what I did. I just did. I just went and took care of clients. You asked me though, like, what are the components of my process? I couldn't tell you. It was all second nature to me. It was all intuitive, right? So, we lacked for a long time, and I went through a lot of employees that I really struggled to train, who were probably really great people and could have been really successful, but because I was trying to train through osmosis, it was a fail.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of being able to name it, it starts with work on the inside and really understanding what's really important to your business. And so, one of those for us back in the day was actually something inspired by my brother. My brother was a client, and he was frustrated that he would call in or email in, and I would look at it and be like, nah, that one's not terribly urgent. I'll get to it tomorrow. So, for me, what I was doing is I was like, if something was urgent, I would jump on it. But if it wasn't urgent, whatevs, I would just let it go. And my brother shared with me, he was like, the problem is everything to me is urgent. Not because I'm weird in some way, but because I have no idea. I don't know if the thing I just shared with you is going to cause my whole system to fry tomorrow, or if it's like just a little like warning, beep that you'll deal with later, like, and it's innocuous. How do I know? And that was a light bulb moment for me, right? That my clients, for them, everything is a fire when they email in. And so I have to put in a little bit of work to unpack their initial thing and help put them at ease, even if I'm not going to do the work for a couple more days. And so he prompted us to start a process where we said, we are going to respond to every single email and phone call within 30 minutes, no matter what. And this was back in like 2011 or 12 when I was just working with families in the Boston area. And number one, I mean, I didn't quite name the concept, but the point is we had a concept that we could define. We are going to respond within 30 minutes every single time. And first, it became easier to now like hold everyone accountable to this thing. I didn't have to worry about like, well, did you evaluate that and whether it's important enough to respond? Geez, get back to that thing quickly. Like that's important. Oh, but that one's not really important. No, everything
Mm-hmm.
gets an appropriate response, right? And then the second thing, just as an aside, we actually started to get a lot more volume because clients started to realize that we were their easiest path to getting answers. This was pre-chat GPT. So they knew that if they just reached out to us, even for like a, Netflix password issue, we would resolve it faster than they would, even if it meant us just looking up their password, because we were that fast. So, naming the concept and identifying what's important is critical. So now fast forward 15 years later, here at this OneVision, we started to appreciate it as we were scaling our contact center, that we hadn't done a good job of actually naming a really important concept. It was something I had always said, and I think we, as a group, Jason, and the leadership team, we had always said this thing. We had said, if you make a client feel the right way, it doesn't matter if you know how to solve the problem or not. You're going to get 5 stars from them. Like you can take care of them, because maybe you're going to get them to the right person. Maybe you're going to look up the information, whatever. But if the client feels like they're in the right place, then it's going to be a successful engagement, even if you're not the most technically trained person. So that leads to our value of EQ over IQ, or EQ, not just IQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we hire for that, for sure. And then we train the technical skills later. But we still hadn't done a good enough job of naming it. So here we are now with a contact center team of 40, almost 50 people. And we're starting to see the weaknesses of that. And we brainstormed internally and started to realize like there's something here that we had not named. And we appreciated that it's effectively this first minute experience, right? How do you make sure that when a client calls in, that they know without a doubt that they have landed in the right place? Now, there are many factors to that. That could be that they have to recognize the person they're talking to. Maybe that's what it means in your business. That could mean that maybe they feel heard, that maybe somebody acknowledges their urgency very quickly. Maybe it's somebody who immediately demonstrates that they have contextual awareness of the system. Oh yeah, Mrs. Smith, I know that you've got that control for system, and it's locally installed in your family room, and the cable box is right under the TV. I know that. Yeah. Maybe it's demonstrating that you remember that your colleague was at the house last week. Oh yeah, I know that John was at the house on Thursday and he took care of that thing. Client immediately feels like they're talking to the right team, the right people, right? And so we named that internally at OneVision, and this quarter are putting in a ton of effort to make sure that by the end of this quarter, everybody is in lockstep, that that is effectively the most important thing you do on
Yep.
any service engagement. And it's been really cool to see it happen from the moment that we named it at our annual, in the last annual planning meeting in the last month or so, to now deploying it across the team. It's been really neat to see.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
excited to see the change that comes from it.
Definitely. And I actually want to respond to this from a bit of like a meta angle and say like, what we're doing on this like public discussion, right? We have current customers on this call. We're sharing a challenge that we're working on, what we're doing to solve it. There's this idea of like building in public. And I think there's this powerful concept here that integrators could potentially take something away from, which is, if you're struggling with service, you're struggling to deliver the level of service consistently to your clients that you want to, it is okay and actually in many respects very healthy to communicate very openly with your customers about, hey, here's a problem, we see it, here's what we're doing to solve it. So riff on that idea of like building in public. Transparency, I know, is really big for you. So
Yeah.
just share some of your thoughts there.
Yeah. I mean, I think communication solves all problems. It really like it if no one has to make any assumptions about what's happening, then if everybody's on the same side of the problem now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to continue to successfully work together, but we're all now going to make decisions rooted in truth, in fact, as opposed to random assumptions or assumptions that may are likely wrong. And whether those assumptions are like motivate, like why isn't he responding? He must not care, or he must not have figured out how to have a team. He's probably on vacation. Why didn't he tell me he's on vacation and he can't respond? And it's like, dude, I just didn't think that was that important. Well, I thought it was important. Okay, all right. Now that I know that, I can address that, right? So communication solves all problems. And I think in this case, when you share proactively, and I remember when I had my handful of clients in the Boston area, I went to them when my rates were too low and they weren't high enough for me to continue to be in this business anymore. And that's how I truly felt. I was like, there's no way I'm going to keep doing this. And I think I was charging 125 an hour or something back then. It's like, I'm not going to keep doing it. It's just not going to scale enough for me. And I will just go get another job and figure something out. And I went and had one-on-one meetings with every client. And I literally said that to them. And they would say, like, I don't understand, like your rates, you're doubling your rates on me. And I was like, look, if I don't do this, if 80% of my clients don't align, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm gonna go find another job. And it's not a threat. I'm telling you so that right? That like your choice is to either find another provider or engage. And it was a really healthy conversation. And it turned into like over 90% of our clients agreeing and staying with the company. And so this is another example of that too. I think it's really important that, our partners know when we're struggling with certain concepts, so that, like, my biggest fear is that a partner thinks, oh my gosh, that's it. They've hit some growth spurt. Now they're growing too fast and they're no longer focused on quality and it's all about the bottom line. Like that couldn't be further from the truth. Right? What this is actually a symptom of is us not effectively naming something that was really important to us and learning how to define it. And it just took time for us to see the effects of that.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the like operational scaffolding that you need in place, some of the basics for anybody who's listening to this discussion and is really early in the journey and maybe overwhelmed by the thought of like, how do I get from where I am today to where service isn't like killing me and actively frustrating my clients. Like what are some of the most basic things? I know we are out there often talking about things like just having a terms of service or some basic membership tiers in place. Talk about what are some of those first steps that you would recommend to an integrator in that position to take a look at?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the overarching theme is how do you bring order to the chaos? And I think about it often in terms of like you've spilled some milk on the counter and it's dripping down. Do you start by wiping up the floor or do you start by picking up the carton of milk at the top? Right? The first thing you do is you lift that carton of milk. We don't want more milk to keep spilling, right? And then the second thing is maybe you start wiping at the top so it stops dripping, and then you go to the floor, right? So same thing here. When we're thinking about the chaos of service, the problem is that we have clients who are calling in all the time or emailing in all the time and in a very disorganized way. When I speak with the sort of average integrator in the industry that's dealing with this problem. And so, number one, can we create channels of communication that all clients can start using that funnel everything into one place? So that might be a support email address, which I promise you your clients will not vomit all over like I thought they might, uh, and a support phone number. And there are many digital systems out there that make this really straightforward to do. And then the next step is, okay, I have those things coming in. Now, how do I make sure that they get organized? So maybe now we're talking about a ticketing system of some kind. There are many options out there. And then when you have that, now you can start to think, okay, if I have all of my stuff coming into one place, now I can think about how do I make sure I have the right staffing to pay attention to that one place. Now I don't have to worry about is everybody paying attention to their inboxes. Now I just have to make sure that during these hours, this person is paying attention. And then during these hours, this person is paying attention. Right. And so that's how we start working our way down the spill. Right. And, I think if we want to go even, on another level, the first part, we were just talking about how do we make sure that all this incoming support is actually coming in an organized and predictable way, or manageable way, I should say. But then the other area is how do we now deal with making sure the economics of all of this work? Right? Okay, again, starting with the spill. The spill is new clients coming in. I know that it is overwhelming to imagine how are you going to get all of your existing clients to reset their expectations about whether they start paying you for remote support or not. That is overwhelming. But let's put them to the side for a moment. Allow that to continue happening the way that it's happening. Focus on the new clients, because that's a very manageable situation. And then after you work with the new clients and you say, hey, we are now starting, we have a terms of service. We charge for remote support after the first 90 days. This is how we bill for it. We charge $50 a month or $100 a month. And then any on-site support, we charge X dollars per hour. And if you're on our premium plan, you get a discounted rate. Whatever your package is, don't overcomplicate it. Just make it super simple and straightforward. Hopefully an A/B option effectively, especially at the beginning, and let your clients choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then work your way down the spill again. Now that you've got your new clients making that choice. Now start going to your existing clients. And let's not worry about all of them. Why don't we actually segment the clients a bit and say, we've got 5% of our clients that are really special and crazy and weird. And maybe we're scared to talk to them. Great. Put them to the side. Don't worry about them. Work on the 95% of clients who are going to be more reasonable. You know they're going to be reasonable. Put together a communication, maybe go and have individual communications with a handful of them so you get a feel for it, then start to batch out those communications. And then at some point, you can go back to those 5% clients and figure out how you want to deal with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And a broad point there, a couple of points. So, break things down, right? Decouple them. I think this is one of those things that can easily get very overwhelming. And so breaking it into these bite-sized pieces of basic stuff, support phone number, support email, basic terms of service agreement, maybe one or two membership tiers that require clients to make a selection, implementing those strategies with new clients first before you go to your old ones. Like there are lots of ways that you can start to move down this curve of getting from, what we call like a best effort service department to kind of a best in class in very incremental steps. And so I think that is hugely important. I want to ask one more question on this, and then I want to get to a few audience questions that did come in before the episode. Let's zoom in on this idea of having membership tiers. I think the obvious thing that people think about when they start to think about premium service plans is driving conversions and generating recurring revenue, which of course we all want. But ultimately, there's this other benefit that is just, it kind of goes back to that idea of dressing for the job you want that we talked about earlier, where when you present these plans to your clients, there's a subtext that you're presenting, which is, this is how we do service. We have these different ways of providing it. And all we're asking for you to do is make a choice. And so you can almost go to this hypothetical thought exercise where no clients sign up for a plan, which again, of course, would not be ideal. But like imagine that world, at least at a minimum now, all of your clients have made it explicit the level of service that they can expect. And you now have like this shared understanding and this playbook that you can operate from.
Yeah. So I think let's pretend we create a menu for a moment, and let's the overarching guiding statement I can make is just make sure whatever your menu has, it has a reasonable sort of a happy path for your various client personas, right? So you're going to have the clients who they're like totally fine not getting any special attention, and they're not going to pay a monthly fee for anything. Okay, cool. Make sure you have a path for that. And then, by the way, you're going to have clients who are going to demand you jump 10 feet high every time they call. Make sure you have a path there. And remember, the path isn't something that takes care of them exclusively. The path is something that allows you to be super happy while taking care of them in that context, right? So when that client calls in asking you to jump 10 feet high, either filter them out and say, I don't deal with clients like that, or put a path in place that allows you to be happy taking care of them. That's your choice, right? And then it's their choice if they want to engage with you. So this menu, imagine a world where the menu says, we will of course schedule appointments on an hourly basis, on a first come first serve basis. Whenever you need support, reach out and our coordinator will put an appointment in the books. And then when we come on site, we will charge you our hourly rate of, let's call it $300 an hour. Also, we provide remote support. If you would like remote support, we charge, let's say, $100 an hour, $100 a month for that. And that covers all of our remote support. Imagine if you then had another option that said, if we will provide remote support and priority scheduling so that urgent things get addressed, and we charge $300 a month for that. And by the way, as part of that, we give a discounted rate. And that discounted rate is $200 an hour when we come on site. And then imagine you had a plan that said, if you want us to just drop everything anytime you call and just treat everything like a 5-alarm fire, we charge $500 a month for that, on top of our $200 an hour discounted rate. Okay, so you now have these options. You can, hopefully you're still with me as I've verbalized some of this, and we've got some clients who are totally happy to just, wait for an appointment, and you got some clients who know that they're going to get addressed if they've got a 5 alarm fire and they want to pay for that. Now let's go down that world, to go down that path. You said 100% of the clients don't choose anything. They choose, or the 100% of the clients choose not to pay for a plan. To your point, what they have done is they've chosen the first option, which was, I don't want remote support. I am totally willing to call in, wait for a next available appointment, whenever that is. Maybe that's a week from now, maybe it's 2 weeks from now. I'm totally willing to pay $300 an hour for every bit of time you spend with me. And nothing will ever be an emergency. And I know that if something is an emergency, you have a way to help me, and it's called your premium membership, and I'll pay a couple $100 a month to get your emergency attention. That would be
Yep.
an amazing world to live in. And not a single client would be paying for a plan. And I would be happy in that world, because I'd be getting $300 an hour now instead of a couple
Yeah.
$100 an hour, right?
Yeah.
And if go to the other side, imagine if every single client said that they were willing to pay $500 a month to get crazy 5 alarm fire attention, and they're still paying $200 an hour for on-site appointments. I would also be happy in that world for
Mm-hmm.
2 reasons. One, I'd be making enough money to sustainably build that team to take care of them. And two, I happen to have the data that says, even when you're that kind of client, 90% of the time it's not a 5 alarm fire, and it doesn't require me to send anyone out same day. So it's
Right.
actually
You know,
totally
quick
sustainable.
response and
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And lest anyone get the wrong impression, these are, we're speaking in extremes, right? Like this is
Totally.
not what's going to happen. We've seen it with
Totally.
hundreds of integrators at this point. Like there's going to be some mix, but it's a good thought exercise to go through. And I think it illustrates nicely the power of just putting decisions in front of clients.
Right.
And so
Right.
ultimately, we are running tight on time. I want to hit these audience questions, but I'm gonna ask you, Joey, to treat these as like a lightning round. So we're
Sure.
gonna fire through. There was three that came in that I think are worth touching on. Um, we had one from Scott who essentially, I'll give you the short version, is went through a challenge where they lost one of their primary service technicians, right? And like we've talked about this, but again, just recap like the importance and the strategies that you can have in place for ensuring that when you do lose those key employees, you're not, taking a huge hit to the client experience.
Yeah, I think firstly, it sounds like this when you lose someone like that, primary service technician or someone who maybe is also moonlighting a service manager, it's a gut punch. And that sucks. And no one wants to, no one would ever choose to go through that experience. I think the first thing is be transparent with your clients. If you think that the service experience is degrading because of it, tell your clients, hey, we lost this individual. I am working post haste to replace them. Here's what I've done in the meantime. Please continue to reach out. We have all hands on deck. Everyone's paying attention. And of course, if something happens to be taking longer than expected, you can text me if you need to, and I will jump on it. So transparency, right? And back to that building in public element. The second thing is, use this opportunity maybe to define the roles. And that's where I go back to that struggle I had of, I thought everything, train people through osmosis, you know, and take a moment to define the role in a way that makes you confident you can go find somebody to fill it and not feel like you have to find that unicorn. If you feel like you
Yeah.
have a job that's being filled that can only be filled by these unicorns, then at least find the silver lining in this experience, and don't allow yourself to be in that situation again. And maybe restructure your job responsibilities so that they're more traditional.
Hmm.
And one thing I would always encourage integrators and business owners in this industry to think about is, are the jobs structured in such a way that you can hire someone from outside the industry? If you
Yeah.
can, it's probably a scalable approach. If you can only find unicorns in this industry, yeah, you might have some work to do.
Yeah. Yep. So open communication with your clients and using this as a catalyst to,
Right.
use that pain as a catalyst to kind of
Totally.
drive maybe better documentation, process, structure, and so forth.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just acknowledging it's a gut punch. And unfortunately, it's going to happen, but you can definitely like just use it as motivation to shore up your business against those kinds of things in the future. Todd reached out and essentially is asking about remanaging expectations. So you shared some anecdotes here, but like in a short kind of recap, how do you go through this? What advice do you give to somebody who's going through this process of like remanaging expectations with a client who's maybe always been able to call the project manager directly or the salesperson or the company owner? What are some of the key takeaways there?
So number one starts with creating those channels of communication. Number two, send the message out to all of your clients and let them know that those channels of communication should not be used, and let them know that they're going to get a better experience for it because you now have a team that's going to be responsive and it'll be more organized. Always try to frame it. You're clearly making these changes because they're not just good for you. You also believe it's going to create a better experience for your clients. Focus on that part, right? And recognize that 80% of your clients will read that and engage with it and be totally okay. And I don't just mean emotionally okay, I mean they'll actually respect it. Now, 20% of your clients will just go about their daily lives and not care. And those are probably the 20% of clients who are the most frequent users of your support. And so you may have to go on a door-by-door campaign of just individually with each client over the next few months, asking them to start using your support address or your support phone number. The hardest thing I found is when I got the individual email to my inbox, to still go through the steps of forwarding that email into my support and then responding to it from support. And it was like this extra 1 minute process, but it made sure that clients never saw me engaging with support from my personal email or from my individual email anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
after I did that for a couple of months, I can now go to them and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I've noticed you're still emailing me directly. I just want you to know that always causes a delay. I do my best. Last week you had a 5 minute delay, or you had like a 5 hour delay because I didn't see your email in time. If you just email our support address, you'll get a quicker response. Would you like me to update your address book for you?
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe it's a matter of updating the address book. And so you'll just go through this one by one. And I every time we have a member of our team who says, I think like every time you deal with this, every time you like work through one more client like that, you are chipping away at this key person dependency problem.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually you erode it down to nothing and it becomes a small nib.
Yep. Love it. All right. Last question that came in is essentially what are your thoughts on selling service as a revenue stream, specifically to clients who maybe had their install done elsewhere? So every integrator's had this, prospect calls you up and says, "Hey, I had this system installed. It's a hot mess. I need
Yeah.
a new integrator." And like, what are some ideas that you have for kind of making that? Because the economics of that can be really tricky. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
One of the best, I think one of the best experiences I've had over the last 10 years of watching our partners develop and evolve on our platform is seeing that as they've gained more confidence in their service department, they've started to embrace takeovers. And that's so cool because oftentimes I remember in our earliest days, partners would come to us and say, actually, I don't even want to deal with clients. Can you just take all my service from me? Right? They just wanted the project. And now, the industry has matured a bit around this and recognized like service is the future. And if I can create a more organized service system, then I would be happy taking on these kinds of clients because now I have a process for it. So I think it comes down to number one, just having a standard for what does the system need to be for your team to be willing to service it. Remember, back to what my brother taught me, you do not have to say yes to everybody. If a client has a system that has not met your standards and you can't service it, let's say it doesn't have oversee, or let's say it's a network brand that you don't manage well, or whatever it might be, then you don't have to service it, and have a referral that you can send them to in those cases, rather than just saying no to them. But tell them these are the things that we do service. Here's what I would need to do to bring your system up to speed. So now there's a clear small project involved to bring the system up to speed. And then going forward, here's how we take care of our clients. I have seen many of our partners actually require takeover clients to choose a paid membership. They don't allow those clients to choose just the hourly option,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's just something, of course, their choice to do, but it's allowed them to take on service takeovers with a smile.
Yep.
Right? They're like, I'm so happy having these now, because if they say yes, I know that it's A, they're allowing me to do the system the way I want to do it with a small project up front, and B, I know it leads to recurring revenue and predictable service experiences.
Love it. All right. Well, that seems like a great place to wind this conversation down. We're at our time for today. So, Joey, thanks for joining us and sharing your perspectives. This has been a ton of fun.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Jason.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for taking some time out of your day to be here with us for the discussion. We really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback or comments, you know how to reach us. We will be sending out a recording to the episode as well, so be on the lookout for that. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up today. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all on the next one. Take care.
Take care.